Hey guys, today I'm going to be doing 3 historical fiction book reviews, the first being Enchantments by Katherine Harrison, The Traitor's Wife by Alison Pataki, and The Fortune Hunter by Daisy Goodwin. Enchantments by Katherine Harrison starts in St. Petersburg in 1917. Rasputin's body has been pulled from the Neva River, and his daughter, Masha, is sent to live at the Imperial Palace with the Tsar and his family. It's hoped that Masha shares her father's special gifts, and that she may be able to help the Tsarevich, Alosha, who suffers from hemophilia. Masha has no such gifts, but she and Alosha share in their love of stories to distract them from the horrors that surround them. I've said in the past numerous times that I love all things Romanov related. I loved this time in Russian history. And of course I had to pick up Enchantments, just seemed right up my alley. And another very high reason I wanted to pick up this book is that it had a strong focus on Alexei Romanov, the Tsarevich, or as Katherine Harrison refers to him in this novel, Alosha. If you have any concerns that Enchantments might be very similar to Robert Alexander's Rasputin's Daughter, have no fear. Enchantments and Rasputin's Daughter, they do share a similar concept in some ways. Both books showcase Rasputin's daughter, Masha, or I believe her real name was Maria, if I'm not mistaken. Both books have that in common, and then they both have in common this similar theme, if you will, of presenting Rasputin as a human being rather than a monster, because throughout history he has notoriously been perceived as this horrible, despicable, devilish monster, if you will. So that's kind of what this book, along with Rasputin's Daughter by Robert Alexander, they both kind of seek to humanize Rasputin more by putting a lot of the perspective through his daughter. So what's different with Enchantments compared to Rasputin's Daughter? Why they're not totally similar books? Enchantments does have a stronger focus on the relationship between Masha and Alosha / Alexei. I'm not really quite sure how to describe him in this book, because Katherine Harrison, like I said, she refers to him as Alosha more than she refers to him as Alexei, so it's a little confusing. And the way Katherine Harrison creates this relationship, the way she creates this bond between Masha and Alosha, it's through their love of stories and storytelling. And that's kind of this big thing that you get going in the book whenever they're telling stories to one another. Is it a real story? Is it a made-up story? You never quite know, and it's kind of left up to the reader to make those decisions and interpret those stories as you will. The whole notion of storytelling is what brings Alosha and Masha together. It's what gives them comfort and solace as all of these horrible things are raging around them. The revolution is raging. And more importantly, the uncertainty of their futures. They have no idea what's to come for the either of them. They don't know if they may die sometime soon. So yeah, that's kind of the point of the storytelling, to make the other feel good, make them feel better, take their minds off of all of the drama. And it's also through the storytelling that we get a good idea of their individual characters. We learn about their interests, we learn about their habits and their mannerisms, we learn about the things that they fear. And I think their relationship, the bond that Katherine Harrison creates between these two characters, I think that relationship works and it succeeds, because if it didn't, that would ruin the whole point of this novel, I think. So just to talk about a few of the minor issues that I had with this novel, you know, you hear the traditional thing of a novel needs to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. This novel, unfortunately, I think my biggest complaint, I feel like this novel was always in a stage of being at the beginning, if that makes any sort of sense. It never really had a proper middle, and then it does have an ending, obviously, but the ending is just really quick and abrupt all of a sudden. So that's kind of what I mean, that I always felt like this book was in a state of beginning. And why I say that is because a lot of the novel, like I said, it's told through storytelling, so a lot of the novel is told through flashbacks. So that's kind of why it always felt like this state of beginning, I suppose. So yeah, you have this whole beginning with Alosha and Masha meeting and becoming friends, and you have all the storytelling elements and the flashbacks. And then yeah, of course, if you know your history, you know that the Romanov family, they were horribly executed. So yeah, you get to the ending, it just jumps right to the Romanov's execution. But other than that minor complaint of mine, I did thoroughly enjoy this novel. It had this beautiful dreamlike quality to it, something almost fantasy-like in some ways. It's kind of hard to describe, but Catherine Harrison's writing, it was absolutely gorgeous and beautiful, and like I said, there's something dreamlike about it. So, of course, if you love all things Romanov like I do, you may want to check this out. I think you might enjoy this. So let's move on to the next book review. The Traitor's Wife by Alison Pataki takes place during the American Revolutionary War, following Peggy Shippen, who becomes the wife of history's most notorious traitor, Benedict Arnold. History knows Arnold as a turncoat, and that he conspired with British officer Major John Andre. But history often forgets about his wife, who was in love with Andre and helped come up with the plot to get Arnold to flip sides. The novel is told from the perspective of Peggy's maid, Clara, who witnesses history right before her eyes. Clara is inspired by the promises that this new nation holds, the freedoms that it offers, and she finds herself faced with the decision to either protect her mistress or save America. I knew I would love this book, you guys. I gave it 5 stars on Goodreads. It didn't disappoint me. The previous books by Alison Pataki that I have read, they were The Accidental Empress and Stacie, Empress on Her Own. I thoroughly loved both those books. So yeah, this book did not let me down. And I seriously think Alison Pataki might be making her way as a new favorite historical fiction writer of mine. So before I do get into this book review, I have to mention the amazing AMC series Turn. It's about the American Revolutionary War, and I freaking love that TV series. And the thing is, that show has actually kind of gotten me into American history, especially the American Revolutionary War, because typically I tend to read a lot of European historical fiction. So yeah, thanks to Turn, I've really got into American history a bit more, and my favorite characters on Turn are Peggy Shippen and Benedict Arnold and Major John Andre. I just find them incredibly fascinating historical figures. So of course, when I discovered this book, I had to pick it up. Alison Pataki's writing is just simply amazing and flawless. Once again, I enjoyed every moment. Just a real page turner, I think. And more importantly, Alison Pataki makes history fun and enjoyable, which can sometimes be quite a hard feat to achieve. And I think it had a really good pace as well. I never felt like it slowed down or slogged or dragged or anything. I think it had just a right perfect pace. And I also just felt like it was very consistent in the action and the dialogue, which are also very important in books like this. So just jumping ahead, let's go ahead and talk about the characters. I really loved the character of Clara, who, it must be made note of, she is a fictional character in this book. We are witnessing everything through her point of view. She is Peggy Shippen's maid. And I liked Clara's growth as a character in this novel because at first she starts off a little timid and kind of afraid of Peggy Shippen because Peggy is just a really out there character. You know, she's just in your face. She gives out her opinions. She's so popular. And here's Clara, who's just simply a maid and yeah, not allowed to have opinions or a voice. So yeah, at first Clara, she's just really kind of timid and afraid of Peggy, and the big thing that she kind of desires is that her and Peggy become friends in a sort of way. And the biggest thing with Clara is that Clara is a supporter of George Washington, whereas Peggy is kind of on the opposite side of things. She is more in support of the crown, if you will. So Clara, she definitely supports the Americans. She supports the ideals that they are presenting, the freedoms that they are presenting, what this new nation could hold for her in the future, the fact that she might not have to be a maid for the rest of her life, that she can do something else with her life. And Alison Pataki also does an amazing job with the real historical people, that being Peggy Shippen and Benedict Arnold and Major John Andre. She does amazing work on those people. So before I do get to Peggy Shippen, let's kind of back up a bit. Let's talk about Major John Andre. He's not in this book very much, which might be a little disappointing to some people, especially if you loved him on Turn. Like I said, he was probably one of my favorite characters on Turn. So if you loved him on that, unfortunately he's not in this book very often. But the few scenes that you do get with him, he makes an impression. He's this dashing British spy, and you definitely immediately get that sense of why Peggy is just head over heels in love with this guy. And I think one of my favorite aspects of this novel was definitely Alison Pataki's interpretation of Benedict Arnold, because of course we all know Benedict Arnold as America's most notorious traitor. And I think what Alison Pataki is trying to do in this novel is trying to make him come across as a human being, you know, give him reason and motive for why he did the things that he did. And you do, I think there is a level of you that sympathize with him. So moving on to Peggy Shippen, I saved her for last because I just adore her. Peggy is one of those characters that you have a love-hate relationship. It's so difficult with her character because sometimes you love her. You love her spontaneity, you love her spunk, you love how opinionated she is considering the time period and considering that women didn't have a voice during this time period. So you love that about her, but then you hate her. You hate her because sometimes her spontaneity and spunk can be a little too much. It can be a little, ooh, okay, calm down, girl. And then, yes, she's also very spoiled and pampered, and she thinks that everything is owed to her. And in some ways, I think Peggy, if I interpreted what Alison Pataki was doing in this novel, in some ways I think Peggy was the true villain of this story, not Benedict Arnold, because Peggy in this novel comes across as the power player. She is the one playing the game, if you will. She's the one making the big moves and getting Major John Andre and Benedict Arnold to team up and to get her husband to flip sides. And if I remember correctly, I believe there's an interview in the back of this book with Alison Pataki, and she's making a lot of references to Macbeth, and that was just such an amazing comparison because in some ways Peggy Shippen is very much Lady Macbeth and Benedict Arnold is Macbeth. Because if you know anything about Shakespeare's Macbeth, Lady Macbeth is the real power behind the throne. So yeah, Peggy definitely comes across like that. So if you're looking for a good, I guess a feminist piece in some ways, this will most likely be right up your alley, because the women definitely have all of the power and control in this novel. They are the schemers and the plotters and the manipulators, and it was kind of great. So overall, I definitely recommend this book. Like I said, I gave it 5 stars. I freaking loved every moment of it. So if you like the American Revolutionary War, if you love AMC's Turn, pick this up. In The Fortune Hunter by Daisy Goodwin, Captain Bay Middleton is assigned the task of guiding Empress Elizabeth of Austria on treacherous hunting paths. What at first seems like a chore turns into something more as Bay discovers that Empress Elizabeth shares his passion for horses. In the meantime, Bay has also made promises to Charlotte Baird, an intelligent heiress, but the growing bond between he and the Empress could destroy his future with Charlotte. I've quickly grown an attachment to Empress Elizabeth of Austria-Hungary. I just don't know what it is. I've just been so captivated by her as a historical figure, a historical character, just such a tragic story for her as well. So, if you've been watching my channel for a long time, I've gushed over Alison Pataki's The Accidental Empress and Stacie Empress on Her Own. I love those books. So of course, when I found out that Daisy Goodwin also wrote a book featuring Empress Elizabeth of Austria-Hungary, I had to pick up The Fortune Hunter. So what you need to know about this novel before you head into it, it's not so much a book about Empress Elizabeth. The focus is more on Charlotte Baird, the woman who historically does marry Captain Bay Middleton. It is more about Charlotte, it is more about Captain Bay Middleton, and then Empress Elizabeth is more of a supporting character, her role in this love triangle, if you will. So yeah, what you also need to know about this novel, it mostly focuses on Empress Elizabeth's, her trip / vacation to England in 1875. And when Empress Elizabeth arrives in England, she needs a guide to help her, go through the treacherous hunting paths and whatnot. So that's where Captain Bay Middleton comes in. He's an excellent horseman. He knows the hunting paths of England better than anyone. And at first there is this a bit of annoyance between Captain Bay Middleton and Empress Elizabeth, because Captain Bay Middleton, at first he thinks, oh, this is an empress from a foreign country. She's going to be dull and boring and not understand us. And yeah, he's quite shocked and surprised when he and Empress Elizabeth have a lot in common, especially their love of horses. And I already brought up the word love triangle in this review, and this may be a hit or a miss for some readers, but for me it didn't bother me at all. I think the love triangle was done incredibly well. It wasn't annoying or just eye-rolling, anything like that sometimes you can get from young adult literature. The love triangle in this book is definitely much more mature and grown up, so you don't have to worry about teenage hormones and teenage drama. Plus, a love triangle in the late 1800s, you ought to go through these steps. You know what I mean? You gotta go through the steps of courtship, so that makes things difficult and complicated. And just speaking of the characters, I did enjoy Daisy Goodwin's interpretation of these historical characters. I really loved her interpretation of Charlotte Baird. Charlotte Baird is just this sweet girl. And Charlotte is perhaps the most relatable of all of the characters as well. Not only is she sweet and shy, but she also has this really, really strong intelligence that kind of puts off other characters, since she is a woman after all. And something else that she likes to do, she has an interest in photography. And photography, you guys, photography plays a huge pivotal role in this novel, which is kind of interesting. It gets a lot of characters in trouble, let's just put it that way. And then talking about Captain Bay Middleton, he could almost come across as the villain of this story, but I never saw him as that. I never saw him as this manipulator of these two women's hearts. I think he had his own complications and his own demons and struggles. You definitely kind of sympathize with him, because he is having trouble trying to choose between these two women, because the two women represent different sides and aspects of his own personality. And then of course you have Empress Elizabeth. Like I said, her role isn't too big in this novel, but she definitely serves her purpose and her function. She has her own deep, dark history lingering in the background, and she just wants to run away from her home. She just wants some peace and quiet. She just wants to ride some horses, have a little bit of fun in her life. So I loved how all three of these characters interacted with one another, because they're all three vastly different characters, and it definitely provides for some interesting and entertaining drama throughout the novel. And I think Daisy Goodwin is a really good historical fiction writer, especially for beginners in the genre. I've read this, and I've also read Victoria by Daisy Goodwin, and she just has this ease with her writing when it comes to historical fiction. She doesn't overload the reader with facts and details. It's all kind of simplistic in some ways. It's easy to get into. So yeah, if you're looking to get into the historical fiction genre, maybe Daisy Goodwin might be a good place for you to start, just to kind of ease you into it. So yes, definitely, I recommend this, especially if you love this time in history, if you love Empress Elizabeth of Austria-Hungary. And that's it for these reviews, yeah guys. Have you guys read any of these books? Do you want to read them? Just let me know your thoughts down below. So that's it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you like this video, you may like these other videos. Bye guys.